Is Gran Turismo technically a video game movie? If it is, it may just be one of the best ever. We're going to talk about the film and take a victory lap with a delicious champagne cocktail named Champagne on the Podium. Today, on the Martini Shot. Hello and welcome to the Martini Shot, home of movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. My name is Brandon. Before we get into the review, let's cross the finish line with a multicolored champagne cocktail I've named Champagne on the Podium. And hey, if movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails is something that you're interested in, be sure to leave a like and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to help support the channel. They say champagne is reserved for the winners on the podium. Well shit, I must be winning all the time because I do enjoy a little bit of the bubbly.
A little bit of the bubbly.
Champagne is synonymous with victory, especially in racing where a shower of it is all but expected. This particular cocktail utilizes champagne along with the light flavors of coconut and elderflower to create a refreshing yet slightly dry experience. To make it truly unique and close to the colors of the Nissan racing team, we are also going to employ a float of red wine on top. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is kind of a multi-layered cocktail. The first layer is going to require a shaker, so go ahead and grab that. To start, we're gonna need some fresh squeezed lemon juice. You're gonna be doing ½ ounce. Now we're gonna sweeten things up with a tiny little bit of simple syrup. You're gonna be doing ½ ounce. And now to build upon the refreshing body of the drink, we're gonna be using some coconut water. You're gonna be doing 2 ounces. Next up is our first alcoholic ingredient, which is going to be elderflower liqueur, aka bartender's ketchup. And for that, you're only gonna be needing ½ ounce. And to wrap things up, we're gonna go ahead and add a little bit of gin into the mix. You're gonna be doing 1 ounce. All right, let's go ahead and get ice in that shaker and shake to chill. And now we are gonna go ahead and strain that into a champagne flute, chilled preferably if you can. This way it'll just keep the drink cooler for longer because there's not gonna be any ice in the cocktail. All right, and here's where our champagne will come into play. You're gonna go ahead and top off the cocktail, but don't fill it all the way to the top. You're gonna wanna leave a little bit of room for that red wine. And now comes the time where we are going to float the red wine on top. You're gonna wanna use a red wine that's a little bit more on the drier side. And what you wanna do is gently pour it over the back of a spoon into the drink. And if you do it right, you should get a nice little layer on top. And there you go, now you have champagne at the podium. So because this is a layered cocktail, there's a lot of progression that you're probably going to experience as you go through the drink. To start, you're going to get a lot of that red wine up front at first. You'll probably pick up on those bold grape notes and maybe even a little bit of bitterness. But as you start to work your way past that, you'll start dipping your way into more of the champagne, which complements the dryness of the red wine, but also adds in this nice, floaty, bubbly kind of mouthfeel. And then as you get deeper and deeper, you start to taste a little bit more of the flavors of the cocktail that we started with at the beginning. The coconut water just makes it absolutely refreshing and pairs so nicely with the little botanical notes of the elderflower liqueur and the gin. The simple and the lemon juice help to sweeten it up just a little bit, but it's not overly sweet. It definitely kind of balances between sweetness and dryness thanks to the champagne and the wine. But yeah, a very classy drink and a very, very beautiful one, if I might add. Whenever you can get layering to come out right, it just makes your cocktail look incredible. And I think this definitely captures that white and red motif I was going for. There's certainly a lot of moving parts at work here, but you're gonna be picking up on a bunch of different things as you continue to drink. You know me, I love a cocktail that has a little bit of progression to it, and I think this is one that's going to be very, very interesting to finish. Now that we have our drink, let's race right into the review of Gran Turismo. Do you like fast cars, underdog stories, a blinding amount of shameless product placement? Then hey, Gran Turismo may just be your new favorite movie. Based on both a best-selling video game, driving simulator, and a true story, Gran Turismo tells the tale of Jan Martinborough going from racing game addict to professional racer, filled with all of the highs and lows that can be found on a Studio Notes checklist. The film's interesting concept does get devalued a bit with its fairly bland narrative and story beats, but does make up for some of the shortcomings with often engaging racing scenes and impressive technicals. The story often feels a bit lopsided in energy and emotion, yet its quick pacing does keep things zooming. It's definitely more of a biopic than a video game film, and at times more of a commercial than an actual film, but there's enough going for it here that makes it a fairly decent watch. Let's talk about perhaps one of the most glaring issues I have with this film, and that's that product placement. If you're not familiar with the Gran Turismo franchise, it's one of the flagship titles for PlayStation, and goddamn, this film will not let you forget it. The film obliterates your eyeballs with as many references to PlayStation, Sony, Nissan, and the game itself as it can without just keeping the PlayStation logo watermarked over the entire film. The film even kicks off with what is undeniably a Gran Turismo commercial. This works for the Super Mario Bros. Movie because it takes place in the game's universe, and this works for Barbie because it's satirical, but it's just shameless advertising here. I knew to expect a bit of brand name circle jerking, but this turned out to be more of a corporate orgy. The film is labeled with the ever suspicious "based on a true story" subtitle, or in some cases, it's literally the name of the movie. Real Harley Quinn birds of prey situation here. Of course, you have to take some of these films with a grain of salt, as more often than not, Hollywood will twist the truth in order to fit the narrative they see fit. That's more or less the case here, framing Jan as the first winner of the GT Academy, a competition to find the best Gran Turismo player and train them to compete in an actual race car. The film does take its liberties with portraying this story and making changes the producers believe to be best. Jan is portrayed as the first ever winner, even though he's technically the third. The Academy is portrayed as the super prestigious proving grounds, while it was a television show in reality, and certain events in Jan's life are rearranged to be used beneficially for the plot, such as the use of a crash Jan was involved in that killed a spectator being used as a plot device when in actuality it took place after the events of the film. That moment does kind of feel gross to capitalize on considering an innocent bystander died, but that's probably the only instance of revisionism I would label as questionable. And truthfully, this kind of stuff isn't that bad. Real life is hardly ever a 3-act structure with adequate pacing. You gotta play fast and loose with the facts, and I don't really have a problem with it here. I do have a problem with the unnecessary or underwhelming aspects forced in, like an obviously studio-mandated relationship side plot. Speaking of underwhelming, the script has to be the technical working against the film the most. The story itself is okay for the most part, but it's just presented in such a boring and predictable way. It's a sports biopic, so you can expect the humble beginning, the hard-ass but caring mentor, the rise, then fall, then rise again that can be found across most of these kind of films. The framework isn't really used in a very insightful or interesting way, which doesn't make the film outright bad, but it doesn't make it that spectacular either. The writing varies from fine to annoying for the most part. It often commits that really egregious sin where they have to over-explain what's happening. Like Jan will be playing Gran Turismo and we can see everything happening on screen, but we gotta have some Melvin over his shoulder explaining out loud how he needs to hurry up to win the race. This happens so many times from Jan's coach in his headset to commentators. This is such a pet peeve of mine in big blockbusters. They think they can get around the show don't tell rule by just doing both at the same time. Sorry, but it still sucks. And some of the dialogue, noob, you mad bro? I get this takes place in the early to mid 2010s, but maybe this might not be that great of a reflection of the time period as you may think. But look, I don't hate this film as much as you may think, so let's talk about some positives. Truth be told, this film did not have me in the first half. It's cliche, uninteresting, and mostly unengaging. But once we finally get into that driver's seat and the stakes become to feel a little bit more real, I'll admit I was hooked. The film seems to wake up and start delivering on engrossing racing scenes and even a few halfway decent emotional moments. That crash I mentioned earlier is still questionable, but I won't lie that the way it's presented is pretty stellar. From a technical standpoint, I think the film succeeds through its high-octane moments. The film does a pretty good job at capturing both the manic speed and the claustrophobia that comes from being strapped into the cockpit. The races incorporate a blend of CGI and well-crafted tracking shots utilizing car mounts and drones that always felt seamless and believable to me. Oh yeah, and in case you forgot this was a film about a video game, the movie does incorporate HUDs, directional lines, and more from the game to show how technically attuned our main character is. It's a nice touch that doesn't feel too gimmicky thanks to its sporadic but intentional use. Additionally, despite being over 2 hours, I thought this film flew by pretty quick, and I can't remember being too bored throughout. As for the performances, I think they're good. Not always great. Archie Madakwe, who you may remember as the guy who got turned into a human butterfly in Midsommar, does a pretty great job as Star Simulator driver Jan. He convincingly captures a lot of the frustration, panic, and determination the real Jan must have experienced, making him a pretty solid character worth rooting for. David Harbour plays Jan's coach and trainer Jack Salter, a retired racer who's not too keen on letting gamers get behind the wheel of expensive death machines. I liked him enough here, even if at times I thought his performance felt a bit restrained. He always seems ready to pop off, but I never really got the intensity I was hoping for. Yet his snarky attitude is still fun enough to make me enjoy his performance. Jamon Hansu gives a understated but great performance as Jan's dad Steve, who I wish we could have gotten more of. We don't get to see this father-son dynamic get fleshed out in a fairly interesting way, but but when he's on screen, he definitely delivers. The only other performance I wanted to mention is Orlando Bloom as GT Academy founder Danny Moore, who overall is just fine, but I did catch him doing some bizarre mannerisms and expressions from time to time. Kinda look like he still carries some of the kookiness from his days on set with Johnny Depp's Jack Sparrow. Even if this film isn't as dead-centered on the video game that inspired it, I still reckon that it's one of the best this struggling genre has to offer. The racing scenes capture the chaos of the sport while the performances and story create a simple-to-digest experience that didn't exactly blow me away, but pleasantly surprised me nonetheless. If you can block out the heavy use of branded logos every 5 seconds, you might be able to see a fairly fun movie underneath. I think we should follow the story's ideas and start finding other games we can utilize this way. Imagine the best kid in Call of Duty getting shipped overseas to fight in the Middle East. It'd be like a modern-day Ender's Game, but probably much funnier. For my rating, I'm giving this film 3 champagne bottles out of 5. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Martini Shot. If you saw Gran Turismo, I'd love to hear your thoughts about it down in the comments. And if you like what you saw here and would like to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow me across all social media channels. Those links are down in the description below. If you enjoy movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails, be sure to check out my website, martinishot.blog. Until next time, thank you again for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Live deliciously, but please remember to drink responsibly.